My name is Sophia Bennett. I am 52 years old. 14 years ago, I lost my daughter. Her name was Emily. She was 15 years old when she passed away in a tragic boating accident. She was my only child. From that moment on, my world shattered into pieces that I've been trying to put back together ever since. Emily was a gentle soul. She loved painting. She had a little easel in her room where she'd create beautiful landscapes and portraits. Her laughter was like sunlight filtering through leaves, bright and warm. She had long auburn hair that she'd tie back in a ponytail, and hazel eyes that sparkled with curiosity. Every morning she'd hug me before school and say, "Love you, Mom," in that soft, melodic voice of hers. I can still feel her arms around me in my quiet moments. My husband's name was James Harlan. We were married for 19 years. James was a reserved man, not one for grand gestures or deep conversations about emotions, but he was steady, a good provider and a devoted father. Or so I believed. One fateful afternoon, everything fell apart. It was summer, the sun was high, but a storm was brewing on the horizon. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when my phone buzzed. It was around 4:00 p.m. My stomach twisted before I even answered. A man's voice on the other end. "This is the Coast Guard. There's been an accident on the lake involving your daughter. You need to get to the marina right away." My world tilted. I dropped the knife I was holding. I rushed to James in his home office. "Emily's in trouble," I gasped. "Boating accident." He froze for a second, then grabbed his keys. We drove in silence, the radio off, the only sound the hum of the engine and my whispered prayers. "Please, Emily, hold on. Please be safe." At the marina, emergency responders led us to a tent they'd set up. A doctor approached, his expression grave. "I'm so sorry," he said gently. "Your daughter didn't make it. The boat capsized in rough waters. We did everything we could." The ground seemed to swallow me. I collapsed into a chair, sobs racking my body. My chest burned. It felt like someone had ripped my heart out. But James, he didn't react. No tears, no embrace. He just stood there, arms at his sides, face blank. His eyes were distant, like he was somewhere else entirely. He muttered something about needing air and walked away, leaving me alone in my grief. I stared after him, bewildered and devastated. Why wasn't he breaking like I was? Didn't he love her? The days following the funeral were a blur of emptiness. Our home, once filled with Emily's art supplies and laughter, became a tomb. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I'd wander into her room, sit on her bed and clutch her favorite paintbrush. I'd smell her clothes, trace her drawings on the walls. The pain was unbearable, a constant ache that never dulled. James went back to his job at the accounting firm just days later. He acted as if life had to march on unchanged. He'd come home, eat in silence, read the newspaper, go to bed. He never mentioned Emily, never looked at her photos, never suggested we visit her gravesite by the lake. One evening I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Don't you miss her?" I asked, my voice cracking. He looked up briefly. "What's done is done, dwelling won't change it." His words were like a slap. I recoiled, fresh tears stinging my eyes. I felt isolated in my sorrow. We shared the same space, but an invisible chasm grew between us. We stopped sharing meals, stopped touching, stopped talking beyond necessities. It was as if I'd lost my daughter and my partner in one cruel stroke. I tried to bridge the gap. I'd suggest counseling or a walk by the lake where Emily loved to sketch. I'd invite him to her grave to lay flowers. "Let's remember her together," I'd plead. But he'd shake his head. We need to move forward, Sophia, let the past rest. How could I? Emily was my everything, my only child. One night, over a cold dinner, I looked at him and said, I can't keep living like this. He met my gaze. Like what? Like ghosts in our own home, this marriage, it's over. He paused, then nodded slowly. If that's what you want. No argument, no plea, just acceptance. We divorced quietly. No drama, no lawyers fighting over assets. I took what I needed and left. I moved to a cozy cottage on the outskirts of town, near a quiet forest trail. It was simple, with a small garden where I could plant flowers in Emily's memory. I brought her paintings, her sketchbooks, and her favorite scarf. I set up a little shrine in the living room, a table with her photo, a vase of wildflowers, and a candle I lit every evening. I talked to her as the sun set. Today was hard, sweetheart, but I thought of you and smiled. It brought a fragile comfort. James didn't reach out. No calls, no visits. It was as if I'd vanished from his life. 3 years later, a mutual friend mentioned he'd remarried. Her name was Laura Simmons. I didn't seek details. I didn't want to know. I buried myself in my new routine. I took a job at a local art supply store, helping customers pick colors and canvases. It reminded me of Emily in a bittersweet way. The other employees were gentle. They sensed my quiet sadness and didn't pry. They share coffee breaks, letting me join in laughter when I could. Yet every twilight, I'd sit on my porch, gazing at the stars, wondering what Emily would be doing now. Would she be in art school, traveling the world with her sketchpad, falling in love? The what-ifs haunted me, twisting the knife deeper. Then, 14 years after Emily's death, I was flipping through the local news app on my phone. A brief obituary caught my eye. James Harlan, 56, passed away suddenly from a stroke. I read it multiple times, emotions swirling, regret, numbness, a faint sorrow. I didn't shed tears, just a hollow ache. The service was modest at the town chapel. I attended, slipping in the back row. Laura sat up front, composed in a dark dress. I observed from afar, then left early, unseen. A week later, as autumn leaves rustled outside, I was in my garden, tending roses. A soft knock at the door startled me. I opened it to find Laura standing there, umbrella in hand against the drizzle. Her face was pale, eyes shadowed. "Sophia, may I come in?" she asked quietly. Wordless, I nodded and led her inside. I brewed coffee, my hands unsteady on the mugs. We sat at the kitchen table, steam rising between us. After a heavy silence, she said, "I have something to tell you, something important." My pulse quickened. "What is it?" She fidgeted with her ring. "It's about James and Emily." The room seemed to close in. "Tell me." Laura took a deep breath. "Before James died, he confided in me. He wanted you to know the truth. He asked me to come here." "What truth?" I whispered, dread pooling in my stomach. She met my eyes. Emily wasn't his biological daughter. The words hung in the air like thunder. I gasped, the mug slipping from my fingers, shattering on the floor. No, it couldn't be, but it was the secret I'd buried deep. Laura continued gently. "He discovered it through a DNA test about 2 years before the accident. He never confronted you, kept it to himself." Tears blurred my vision. How did he find out? He'd been curious about family history, did one of those ancestry kits. The results didn't match. It devastated him. I clutched the table edge, memories flooding back. I'd been young, impulsive. Before James, there was Ryan Fletcher, a brief fling during a summer trip. When I learned I was pregnant, Ryan had already moved on, unreachable. Then James entered my life, kind and stable. I told him about the pregnancy early on. He proposed anyway, vowing to raise the child as his. "We'll build a family," he said. And we did. For years it was perfect. But the secret lingered in my heart, a shadow I ignored. "I never meant to deceive him," I murmured. "I thought it was better left unsaid. Emily was ours in every way that mattered." Laura nodded. "He loved her fiercely at first, but the truth ate at him. He withdrew, unsure how to process it. After the accident, it broke him completely." I thought of that day at the marina, his stoic face, his silence. I'd interpreted it as indifference, but now it was grief compounded by betrayal. "He pulled away from me," I said, voice trembling. "Acted like Emily never existed. I thought he didn't care." "He cared too much," Laura replied. "The pain of losing her, knowing she was his biologically. It twisted him. He couldn't face you, couldn't risk the confrontation. That's why your marriage crumbled." Sobs escaped me. I wish he'd told me. We could have talked, healed together. "He regretted it," she said softly. "At the end, he said he wished he'd been stronger, that he'd shown you more support. He never stopped loving Emily or thinking of you." Her words pierced me, all those years of misunderstanding. "Did he forgive me?" I asked, desperate. Laura hesitated. "He didn't say it outright, but his actions spoke. He kept her drawings in a box under the bed, looked at them often, and he wanted you to have peace." I wept openly now, the weight of guilt and relief crashing over me. Laura finished her coffee and stood. "I'm glad I told you. James found some closure in sharing this." As she left, she turned. "He carried a photo of the three of you in his wallet, always." Alone again, I sank to the floor amid the broken mug shards. The truth was out, raw and painful but liberating. That night I lit 3 candles, one for Emily, one for James, and one for the family we once were. I whispered apologies into the flame. "I'm sorry for the secret, but our love was real." In the days that followed, I revisited the lake where Emily died. The water was calm, reflecting the changing leaves. I scattered petals on the surface, speaking to her spirit. "I told your father everything," I said. "He loved you even in his silence." Sitting there, I reflected on my younger self, scared, hiding the truth to protect our fragile happiness. Ryan Fletcher, a fleeting memory gone before Emily arrived. James had been her true father, teaching her to swim, framing her first painting, cheering at her school art shows. The DNA was just biology, the bond was deeper. But the lie had festered, unspoken, until it poisoned us. When Emily died, it amplified every crack. Laura's revelation didn't erase the hurt, but it reframed it. We weren't villains, just flawed humans stumbling through loss. I started a journal, pouring out my thoughts. One entry became a letter to James. "Dear James, I'm sorry for the deception. I was terrified of losing you, of shattering our world. You gave Emily a father's love without question. You gave me stability and joy. I didn't know you, uncovered the truth. If I had, perhaps we could have bridged the gap. Your silence wounded me, but now I see your pain mirrored mine. We both grieved alone when we needed each other most. Thank you for the years of warmth, for being her dad in heart if not blood. I forgive the distance, I hope you forgive the lie. With lingering love. Sophia." I tucked it into Emily's old sketchbook, a symbolic release. Gradually life softened. The ache remained, but it coexisted with moments of light. I volunteered at a community arts center, teaching kids to paint, channeling Emily's passion. One day, a young girl with auburn hair showed me her landscape. "It's for my mom," she said. It warmed my soul. I smiled genuinely. I still visit the lake weekly, laying flowers. On James's death anniversary, I light a candle and remember his quiet strength. My story isn't tidy or triumphant. It's woven with regret, unspoken words, and profound loss. But it's also threaded with enduring love, hard-won truth, and tentative healing. I learn secrets corrode like rust, but revelation, though agonizing, can cleanse. I lied to my husband, and it cost us dearly. Yet beneath it all, the love we shared for Emily and each other endures, untainted by biology. That I hold on to.